Nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes, and this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world, and then shall the end come.
Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?
Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End of the Age, and I want to welcome you today to Tuesday's edition. And I thank you for joining me this afternoon. And before I get off into my topic for today, I hope that you will join with me and remember the families of those victims that were killed by terrorists in Brussels, Belgium. Please remember them in your prayers and those folks that were injured. It's a horrible tragedy, and it appears that a terrorist suicide bomb attack at the Brussels airport today, and it set off 2 blasts that rocked the terminal at around 8 a.m. this morning, killing at least 14 people and injuring dozens of others. Then 79 minutes later, at 9:19 a.m., at least 20 people were killed and scores injured, some critically, when a blast hit a metro station. So I ask that you join with me in prayer for those individuals and their families, that God would keep His hands upon them and bring comfort and peace into their life, because it's just a horrible travesty that we've seen happen this morning. And then also, I would ask for your prayers for us as well, because Irvin, his wife, my wife Jana, and my sister-in-law Kara will leave for our Spring Israel tour in 2 days. We leave Thursday, and we will actually be flying out of that very airport in about 2 weeks. And so I ask that as we travel, that you keep us in your prayers as well. We've got a pretty good sized tour, and we're going to go into Israel first, then we'll be going up to Europe. And when we fly out to come back home, we'll actually be flying out of that very airport that was bombed this morning. So just remember us in your prayers as well, along with the victims of the attack and their families, that God would keep His hands upon them, and that these things would end. I mean, because we've got to have God's hands upon our lives, and so we covet your prayers. So please remember us as well. So I'm going to get off into my the topic today, and we're talking about being in the end time. And I'm going to be giving you several proofs that we are in the end time. Have you noticed how the world just feels different lately? I know that from the time when I was growing up, it seemed like everything was just kind of a lot slower, and there wasn't that much turmoil in the world. It just wasn't, you didn't really feel like somebody behind the scenes is running this big machine, this world government and a world religion and all these different things. It just wasn't so predominant. Life was just easier. But now, that was 30 years ago. Now that I'm almost 50, it just seems like there's so much more happening in the world right now. And of course, we know, if you study the prophecies of the Bible, you know that we're in the end time, and we're not very far away from the second coming of Jesus Christ. You say, well, Dave, how do you know that? Because a lot of people say that. I get questions all the time. You guys say we're in the end time, but how do you know? Can you prove it? Give me some updated proofs. Well, that's what I'm going to do on today's program today. And think of it, you understand the 7 trumpets of Revelation written in or around 96 A.D. Well, that was just around 2,000 years ago now. And the first one of those sounded in 1914. If you look at the first 5 trumpets that have occurred, they went almost 2,000 years before those events started to occur. But when you look at the first trumpet, it's World War I. That was 1914 to 1919. So it went almost 2,000 years. Then the first angel blows his trumpet and World War I occurs, 1914 to 1919. Then in World War II, 1939 to 1945, that's the second trumpet. Study your prophecies, and you've heard us teach on the 7 trumpets before. You'll understand that these are the events that occur when the angel sounds its trumpet. Then the third trumpet was the Chernobyl nuclear accident in 1986, and that began the process of globalization and the speeding up of time that began with the tearing down of the Berlin Wall in 1989. Then, of course, that was the fourth trumpet. Then the fifth trumpet was the Iraq War with Saddam Hussein. That was 1990 to 91. So you went almost 2,000 years before the trumpets, those events started to occur. And then think about it. Over the last 100 years or so, the first 5 trumpets have occurred. Those events have taken place. So now, if you look at it in the grand scheme of things and look at the timeline, the sixth trumpet, which is the sixth trumpet war, is just ahead of us. It's the next event on God's prophetic timeline. And then, of course, the seventh trumpet is the second coming of Jesus Christ, the rapture, and we're taken. Then we go with Israel to fight. Then we go with the Lord to fight on behalf of Israel at the Battle of Armageddon. So are we in the end time? Absolutely. The 7 trumpets is the easiest way for me to prove it. But I wanted to use the program today to give you several proofs. Now, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I thought, you know, I can pretty much go to any news source today and find something that has to do with the fulfillment of prophecy. I mean, it's easily. Some of the websites that I go to, first off, every day, The Drudge, I go to Jerusalem Post, Israel National News, or Arutz Sheva. I'll go to The Blaze, we'll go to Debka File, CNS News, some of the different ones. A lot of them are overseas is where we go for our information. But I can go to almost all of those websites every morning and pull articles off proving that prophecies written 2,000 to 2,500 years ago is coming to pass right now. So on today's program, I'm going to give you several proofs that we are absolutely in the end time. So proof number 1 is the already established world government. The prophecy of the world government is found in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 3, and it describes a world government that will be established just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. It also describes the leader of that global governing entity. You and I would know him as the Antichrist in prophecy. Well, you say, well, how in the world are you going to prove that? Well, let's look at some different articles that I pulled just over the last few days that prove that we're already in this established world governing body. This article comes from the Washington Times, and it states, border agents, the DHS has no intention of deporting illegals. So it states, a top Homeland Security official told Border Patrol agents that the Obama administration has no intention of deporting many of the illegal immigrants that are caught trying to sneak into the country, ordering instead that they be released so they don't clog up the courts. A leading advocate for agents testified in Congress lately. Well, Brandon Judd, who's the president of the National Border Patrol Council, said that the orders are new. It's a catch and release policy, which he said amounts to amnesty, because it means many illegal immigrants are never going to be asked to leave the country. Well, then Donald Trump comes along and says he's got some big plans for the nation if he would ever become president, and one of those plans would be a massive Trump-style wall at the Mexican border to keep illegals out of the country. So you understand that the world governing body that will be established wants to do away with all the borders and to have one nation state in the world, just one large global nation with one world government that rules over that whole global nation. That's their goal, to do away with borders. And when you have a potential presidential candidate like a Donald Trump who says, I'm going to build a wall, that's why the international community starts to balk at that. Because he's coming against their international community and what they want to do. The established world governing body. They don't want borders. They want to do away with nation states and have one big global nation with their world government sitting on top. And so that's one of the articles that I found among many. The next article is that Hillary Clinton yesterday in her AIPAC speech stated, for the security of Israel and the world, we need America to remain a respected global leader committed to defending and advancing the international order. Well, what does she mean by that? Well, the international order is simply the New World Order or the world government. The international order. So she's coming right out and saying in her AIPAC speech, we need to promote and support the international order. What is it? It's the world government. It's the prophesied world government that will be established on earth just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ and the Battle of Armageddon. A fulfillment of prophecy. It's already established in many ways, but it will really come to a supreme power with teeth in just the near future. They're setting it up. They're establishing it right now. The next article I found will be very interesting to most of you all. And it states that the title of the article is "The Ruling Elite Grows Desperate to Destroy Donald Trump's Presidential Bid." This comes from the Global Research and the Center for Research on Globalization. And you can go pull all these articles and read them for yourself. I've taken excerpts from each article, but you can read the whole thing to really get a grasp on what's going on. But the article states that the global elite are fearing that Donald Trump will lead people to revolt against the New World Order or the world government that they have established. So some excerpts from the article states, with this piece, I'm neither advocating nor endorsing Donald Trump for president. The aim of this article is to simply examine the extreme reactivity coming from the elite to desperately plant another puppet as president, fearing that an outsider of the Trump order could lead to a national uprising and revolt against globalism's tyranny. Thus, it is of critical importance for the American electorate to not be blindsided by the over-the-top cheating and nefarious barrage of subversive tactics being executed at the feverish, frenzied pace as we head toward the home stretch to Election Day. Forget all the labels, Republican, Democrat, conservative, liberal, left, right. In the 21st century American politics, they're all totally non-relevant, meaningless, sleight of hand, divide and rule weapons used by a handful of controlling families who've owned this planet for centuries, with Europe's Rothschilds and America's Rockefellers most readily coming to mind. These ideological tags and labels have been an extremely effective means of neutralizing any and all potential threats from ever uniting to challenge or oppose the status quo power monopoly maintaining absolute control over planet Earth increasingly during this last century. The turning point for the elite actually arrived exactly a half century earlier than 1963 with the passing of the Federal Reserve Act, followed 8 years later by the creation of the Council on Foreign Relations, or the CFR, the raw power driving the aggressively imperialistic U.S. foreign policy. Virtually every president over the last century has either been a blue blood Anglo-elitist CFR man or a Yale Skull and Boners or high-degree Freemason. And if the president wasn't any of the above, you can bet that the vast majority of his key cabinet posts were filled with these elitist members, especially heading the Defense, the Treasury, and the State Departments. So people from not just the U.S., but all Western countries are becoming increasingly fed up and angry with their federal governments, more aware of how they've insidiously encroached and stolen our policy and freedoms and clearly do not represent our interests. Donald Trump's appeal is tapping into this deepening divide between citizens and their oppressively dishonest and secretive government. This secret cabal is an extension of the world government that has already been established. And they do not like anyone, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, or anyone else, pushing back against their plans to rule the world. These global elite are internationalists, globalists, or federalists, and all are believers in a one-world government. So it's simply describing that the extension of the international conglomerate or the world government, the extension here in the United States, which is the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, the Brookings Institute, all of these institutions are an extension of the world governing body that's trying to rule the world. And this article is saying that anybody who stands in the face of that, a Ted Cruz or a Donald Trump, that they have huge problems with that, and they're going to push against them to try to get them never to become president of the United States because they don't fit into the mold. And so it's another article showing us that there is an established global governing body that's trying to rule the world. And the Bible says in the near future, that's absolutely what's going to happen. So yes, we are living in the end time. The next article comes from the Israel International News, and it states that John Kerry, that a two-state solution requires a global push. So an excerpt from the article states that Kerry, still set on a peace deal, is discussing the French initiative, and it says that international effort is necessary amid the reports of Obama's UN plans. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry told a press conference in Paris on Sunday that America is still set on forcing Israel and the Palestinian Authority into a peace deal, but that global efforts would be needed in order to get this to happen. Obviously, we're all looking for a way forward. The United States and John Kerry remain deeply committed to a two-state solution. It is absolutely essential, Kerry said. There's not any one country or any one person who can resolve this. This is going to require the global community, and it will require international support. So what is Mr. Kerry talking about when he says global community or international support? He's referring to the New World Order or the global governing system of the elites. He's going to say, we need all of the elites to come in and help us. We need the international community to get this done because not one nation or one man is going to be able to get it done. So it's another call for the world government or the international community, globalization. All these things mean the New World Order or the world government that's already established. And the Bible prophesies, Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 3, that just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ, a world government would be established. And folks, we've already seen it established. It's here, it's in power, and in the near future, the Antichrist will take the reins of that and rule the world with an iron fist. So, proof number 2 that we're living in the end time, a peace agreement in the Middle East. The prophecy of the Middle East agreement between the Israelis and the Palestinians is found in Daniel 9, verse 27. And it states, "And he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. And in the midst of the week, he shall cause the sacrifice and the oblation to cease. And for the overspreading of abominations, he shall make it desolate, even until the consummation, and that determined shall be poured upon the desolate." Now, there's a lot in this verse, but from this verse and others, we know that in the near future, representatives of the international community will impose an agreement upon Israel and the Palestinians, which will last for a 7-year period, and it has to do 3 things. This is how we'll recognize the exact peace agreement. If a peace agreement is signed before this that doesn't allow for these 3 things, it's not the one. The specific agreement that we're talking about that will start the final 7 years to the second coming of Jesus Christ in the Battle of Armageddon will do 3 things. Number 1, it will establish a Palestinian state in the West Bank or a 2-state solution. Number 2, it will allow the Jewish settlers presently living out in Judea to remain in their homes, living as a Jewish minority in the new Palestinian state. And then number 3, it will place the Temple Mount under an internationally supervised sharing arrangement, allowing both Jew and Muslims to worship there. The entire conflict between the Israelis and the Palestinians stems from Israel's belief that the land of Israel was promised to their ancestor Abraham 4,000 years ago. It's found in Genesis chapter 15 through 18, and they are absolutely right. That land was promised to them, to Abraham originally through the lineage of Isaac 4,000 years ago. On the other hand, the Palestinians believe that they have a right to the land because their ancestors have lived there for hundreds of years. They are wrong. They have no right to the land. It's Israel's land given to them by God. Well, the international community or the world government has come up with the conclusion that a 2-state solution is the only avenue to peace. Israel and Palestine living side by side in their own state. Of course, this requires Israel to trade land for peace, which God told them never to do. And for almost 4 decades, world leaders have attempted to negotiate an agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, obviously with no success. However, the quest for peace has not yet ended. This next article comes from the Israel National News, and it says that there's a report. Obama is to use the United Nations to divide Jerusalem. So an excerpt from the article states, in the waning days of his presidency, Obama reportedly is looking to the United Nations Security Council to force Israel to divide Jerusalem. With about 10 months left in office, President Barack Obama is considering unprecedented moves to implement a 2-state solution, according to the Wall Street Journal report. Senior U.S. officials revealed that the president is looking to initiate a final negotiated settlement between Israel and the Palestinian Authority using United Nations Security Council resolutions, a step that would obligate not only Israel and the Palestinian Authority, but effectively determine the direction of U.S. policy for the president's successor as well. On Monday, the Prime Minister's office reported that Netanyahu's annual trip to the U.S., planned for later this month, had been canceled. Israeli officials remarked that the cancellation was in part due to President Obama's refusal to schedule a meeting with the Prime Minister. Later on Monday, the White House issued a statement denying those claims, asserting that the president had in fact invited the Israeli leader to talks during his visit. So there's a little headbutting going on between Netanyahu and Obama because of Obama's plan to go to the United Nations for Security Council resolutions towards Israel and the Palestinians. But according to the plan described by senior U.S. officials, Obama is considering reviving the dormant Middle East Quartet, a diplomatic body including the United States, the United Nations, the European Union, and Russia, to apply pressure to Israel and the Palestinian Authority to resume active negotiations. The president is also considering use of a United Nations Security Council resolution to forcibly extract concessions from Israel and the Palestinian Authority. The U.S. has until now vetoed any such resolutions, though Mr. Obama has in the past threatened to allow them to pass. A Security Council resolution would be binding on all parties, unlike General Assembly measures, which are non-obligatory recommendations. Such a resolution would remain in force even after the President leaves office in January, effectively shaping the future of American policy in the region for Mr. Obama's successors. The resolution would require Israel cease construction over the Green Line and would force Israel to recognize Eastern Jerusalem as the capital of Palestine. At the same time, the Palestinian Authority would be obliged to officially recognize Israel as a Jewish state and would be pressured to give up long-standing demand for a right of return. Well, in their AIPAC speeches yesterday, both Donald Trump and Ted Cruz stated that they would veto any such resolution. Ted Cruz stated, "All of us here understand that Israel is not the barrier to peace. It is the Palestinian Authority and its so-called unity government with Hamas. If the Palestinians try to, through a UN resolution, get that to unilaterally declare Palestinian statehood, I will fly to New York personally to veto it myself." Donald Trump also stated at the AIPAC speech yesterday, he stated, "Which brings me to my next point, the utter weakness and incompetence of the United Nations. The United Nations is not a friend of democracy. It's not a friend of freedom. It's not a friend even to the United States of America, whereas all of us know it has its home in New York, and it surely isn't a friend to Israel." With President Obama in his last year, discussions have been swirling about an attempt to bring a Security Council resolution on the terms of an eventual agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. Let me be clear, an agreement imposed by the UN would be a total and complete disaster. The United States must oppose this resolution and use the power of our veto. Why? Because that's not how you make a deal.
When current events are found in Bible prophecy, it's astonishing. At Endtime Ministries, we are seeing them unfold every day, and so can you. We've put together a current events in Bible prophecy package for anyone who wants to understand like never before. Irvin Baxter and his dedicated staff have spent hundreds of hours of research and study, and in doing so have discovered that current events in Bible prophecy are telling the same story. These 13 DVDs will prepare you to be ready in this extraordinary time that God has destined you to live. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com and save over 20% when you buy the current events in Bible prophecy package.
All my life I have heard the statement, nobody's perfect. But one day Hebrews 10:14 caught my attention. It says, "For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified." I attempted to reconcile this statement with what I had viewed as the many imperfections in myself. Could it be that there are human beings on this earth that God considers perfect? In You Are Perfect, Irvin Baxter explains what it means to be sanctified and why God sees those that are sanctified as perfect. This teaching has given people peace and security in their walk with God because of new understanding of how God sees them. This lesson is available on DVD, CD, in printed format, or even digital download, to tell you not what's wrong with you, but what's right with you. You are perfect. Call 1-800-ENDTIME or go to endtime.com to get yours today.
If your radio station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com to continue to listen to today's broadcast.
Well, there's so much going on in the news today. And as I was thinking about my program today and what I would talk about. I know that we're in the end time. I get questions all the time. Dave, how can you prove we're in the end time? And it's easy. I can go to almost any news source that's a reliable news source and pick out something that has to do with the fulfillment of prophecy in 2016. And so that's what we're constantly posting articles on our website of up-to-date things on the world government, world religion, the mark of the beast, the peace agreement that's going to be signed, World War III, all of the major prophecies that are foretold to occur just before the second coming of Jesus Christ, they're in our news every single day. And so I wanted to answer or to give several proofs on today's program that we are in fact in the end time, because it's so easy. You know, 60, 70, 80 years ago, it would have been very hard to go through any news source. You could read your newspaper and it was about a new factory starting up, or a new car that Ford was putting out, or just general stuff, but not necessarily the fulfillment of prophecy happening daily like we see it now. Why? Because the closer we get to the second coming of Jesus Christ, these prophecies will start clicking off just really fast. Well, that's what we're watching happen. And at the beginning of the program, I went through the first 5 trumpets, the 7 trumpets in the book of Revelation. The first 5 have already occurred within the last 100 years. And so it's easy to prove that we are in fact in the end time. Now, before I went off to the break, in the last segment, I gave a couple articles proving that we're already into the established one world government that will be on the earth just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Then I talked about the upcoming peace agreement that will be signed between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and they're ramping that back up. That's not gone away. The Bible prophesies that it will happen, and it will in fact happen. It won't, there's not 1/10 of 1,000% that it won't happen, because it's prophesied in the Bible. And I was stated that Obama, in his last 10 months, is considering going to the United Nations and getting a United Nations resolution against Israel and the Palestinians to get them to come back together and negotiate a peace agreement. Well, at the in their APAC speeches yesterday, both Donald Trump and Ted Cruz stated, "We will not do that. We will veto any UN resolution that comes against Israel and the Palestinians." Well, in the latter part of his speech, Donald Trump said this: "It's not up to the United Nations to impose a solution. The parties must negotiate a resolution themselves. The United States can be useful as a facilitator of negotiations, but no one should be telling Israel it must abide by some agreement made by others thousands of miles away that don't even really know what's happening." Donald Trump stated, "When I'm president, believe me, I will veto any attempt by the UN to impose its will on the Jewish state." So both Ted Cruz and Donald Trump and John Kasich and Hillary Clinton stated that they would veto any move by the United Nations to impose resolutions upon Israel and the Palestinians. But if you remember, there's a little excerpt from an article about Obama trying to divide Jerusalem and using the UN to do that, and it stated that if he could get a resolution passed before he left office next January, that it could possibly affect the foreign policy of his successor. So we'll have to see how that plays out, whether he could get something set in stone that the next president would have to abide to, or would they be able to veto that? We'll have to study that out and see, because only time will tell. But we know that in the future there will be a peace agreement signed according to the prophecies of the Bible. But it also lets us know that we are, in fact, in the end time. We're not approaching the end time. The end time is not hundreds of years away. We're already there. 2,000 to 2,500 years ago, many of the writers of the Bible prophesied events that would occur just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. You and I, folks, here in 2016, we're living through these things coming to pass right now. And it's in every major news source in the world. I can go to New York Times, Debka File, Jerusalem Post, any major news of the major news sources, and pull out an article that has to do with the fulfillment of prophecy. I do it every day, all day long. And our research team does here, and Irvin Baxter does. We all do. Letting us know that we are, in fact, in the end time. So the third proof that I have that we're in the end time is World War III. Remember, I went through the first 5 trumpets? Well, the 6th trumpet, the next one to occur on God's prophetic timeline, is World War III. In the near future, there are 2 major prophetic events that will take place that will affect every person on earth and change the course of this world forever. The first one is the peace agreement that will be signed. The second one is this World War III, or the 6th trumpet war. And with the way prophecies are converging and the pace at which they are being fulfilled, it's possible that both of these events will take place over the next few years. So they're not hundreds of years away. All of the prophecies that are supposed to have occurred up to this point, before those, they've already occurred. Those events have taken place. These are the next 2 events on God's prophetic timeline. And having followed the prophecies for years now, we know that God's prophetic timeline, it can pause for a while and then it can accelerate very rapidly. Therefore, we can't be sure that these events will happen that quickly, but our knowledge of Bible prophecy leads us to believe that it is very likely that they will. The 6th trumpet war is the same exact prophecy as the Euphrates River War in the Bible, which we commonly refer to as World War III. It's foretold in Revelation chapter 9, verse 13 through 16. And it states, "And the 6th angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the 4 horns of the golden altar which is before God." This is a vision given to John, saying to the 6th angel which had the trumpet, "Loose the 4 angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates, and the 4 angels which were loosed, which were prepared for an hour a day, a month and a year, for to slay the 3rd part of men. And the number of the army of the horsemen were 200,000, and I heard the number of them." So the prophecy tells us 3 specific things. Number 1, this war will start in the Euphrates River region. The Euphrates River runs from Turkey down through Syria, through Iraq, and then it empties into the Persian Gulf just alongside the bottom point of Iran. So 4 nations house the Euphrates River. The Bible says this war will start in that region. Number 2, 1/3 of the human race will be destroyed as a result of this war. 1/3 of the human race will be destroyed as a result of this war. Number 3, an army of 200 million will participate in the war. Now, we know that there are 3 entities on earth that can field an army of 200 million soldiers: China, the Muslim world, and India. So one of those 3 entities has to be involved in the war. Now, in terms of decimation, other than Noah's flood, which wiped out everybody on earth except 8 people, this coming war will be the most catastrophic and deadly event humans have ever experienced in the history of the world. Nothing has even come close. At the time, the death toll of World War III, or the Great War, far surpassed any prior war with 8.2 million casualties. In an effort to eliminate the possibility of a world war ever happening again, the League of Nations was formed. However, the United States Congress hesitated at the idea of being part of a world government, which is how many viewed the international organization of the League of Nations. Well, realizing that the United States would have to, in many ways, surrender U.S. sovereignty, they voted against it. And of course, since U.S. President Woodrow Wilson, who had championed the idea, could not carry his own government into the League of Nations, it quickly dismantled and fell apart. 20 years later, the unthinkable happened, World War II. With the death toll from this war standing at 52 million, the cry for world security became louder than ever. Of course, the prevention of a third world war ever happening again was the main reason given for the second attempt at a global governmental structure, the United Nations. The, I will say, publicized concept of this entity is to have a place where nations, rather than going to war, can settle their disputes in a more diplomatic way. Thankfully, for the last 70 plus years, we've not had a world war, but all of that's actually about to change according to the prophecies of the Bible. Now, we have this prophecy of a future war that will kill 1/3 of mankind, or approximately 2.4 billion with a B. Now, that's 40 times World War II. It is the next prophetic event to occur on God's prophetic time clock. How do we know this? Well, like I said before, the prophecy of the 7 trumpets mentioned in the book of Revelation spans Revelation chapter 8, verse 7, through chapter 11, verse 19. In these scriptures, John's given a vision of a series of events that would occur when 7 angels sound a trumpet. Having studied these prophecies, it's obviously our opinion that the first 5 angels have blown their trumpet and that those events have already taken place. That means that the 6th trumpet, which is the Euphrates River War or World War III, is the next prophecy to be fulfilled on God's prophetic timeline. Remember, this war has to emanate from the Euphrates River region. Well, over the last 2 years, ISIS has captured over 40% of the Euphrates River. Russia has now taken control of the western side of the Euphrates in that area, and the United States has controlled the eastern side. So, and of course, both of them are in an effort to wipe out ISIS. Well, even though Vladimir Putin has decided to withdraw some troops, he still will keep a military presence at the port of Tartus and at the Khmeimim air base, from, of course, which Russia has launched most of its airstrikes. He will also leave the S-400 air defense missile system designed to bring down commercial or fighter aircraft. So he's definitely going to leave a presence there. This scenario means that, as of today, the 2 greatest nuclear powers on earth are straddling the Euphrates River, and 65 nations have also joined together with the United States in an effort to defeat ISIS. So I'm giving you proof today that one of the prophecies prophesied just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ is World War III. It'll start in the Middle East region, right along the Euphrates River, and I'm going through what's going on with ISIS and some of the different scenarios, letting us know that we are in the end time right now.
The seeds of the Battle of Armageddon were sown on November 29th, 2012. The seeds sown on that historic day are in the process of producing a dreadful harvest. The Bible actually describes it as the harvest of Armageddon. Learn the story of what happened on November 29th, 2012, when the seeds were sown for the world's final battle, the growth of which are the events that will occur on the journey to where the story ends, at the reaping of the harvest of Armageddon. Call 1-800-END-TIME to order this important lesson.
I want to introduce you today to what I call the Armageddon Hospital. It was October of 2010. The headline, Israel builds world's largest underground hospital, immediately arrested my attention. When I read that it was being built in Haifa, Israel, I fully understood the implications of this announcement. Haifa is located at the western end of the plain of Megiddo, the prophesied site of the Battle of Armageddon. Would the world's largest underground hospital, specifically designed for use in time of war, actually become the hospital to which the wounded of the Battle of Armageddon would be brought? It was obvious to me that the answer to this question was undoubtedly yes.
Go to endtime.com and under Irvin's Thoughts, click the Rambam link to watch the video.
Think about it, everybody. We're talking about a World War III. that's prophesied in the Bible in the near future. And think about it. ISIS is not only fighting in the Middle East, but it has established bases in 35 nations around the world. It is spreading like a horrible, contagious virus, and it is simply not going to go away. This is not a civil war, and they're not just trying to protect or conquer one small region. The ultimate goal of ISIS is total world domination. Of course, ISIS is claiming that they were the ones responsible for the bombing in Brussels, Belgium this morning. There's also the potential of another terror attack on the United States, which could lead us into World War III, and it could be possibly carried out by terrorists from the Euphrates River region, and that could spark the next World War. Of course, there's a lot of airports around the world that are tightening up security because of what happened this morning. And I've heard that Donald Trump and some of the other people are calling for increased security along our southern border because of all of the illegal immigrants and things that are coming across, saying that there could be terrorists in there, which is very likely. But also leading us into World War III, perhaps Israel will attack Iran. Of course, rumors say Israel may actually do this before Iran is finally able to build a nuclear weapon. Israel knows one bomb will destroy their country. Recently, Iran reportedly test-fired 2 ballistic missiles with the phrase, "Israel must be wiped out," written in Hebrew on them, as a show of force by the Islamic Republic. Of course, at this point, we cannot be for certain what exactly will start the war. However, we do know it will start very soon in the Euphrates River region if it has not begun already. So the Bible prophesies a World War III, a war that will kill 1/3 of the world's population in the near future, and it will emanate from the Euphrates River region. And now you've got several scenarios there that could just blow up at any minute. If Israel was to attack Iran, we'd be in World War III tomorrow morning. Something could spark ISIS, or something could happen with the ISIS conflict, and we could be this thing could escalate into World War III today. So there's many different scenarios going on in the Middle East that we're watching on a daily basis, because we know one of the next prophecies to occur on God's prophetic timeline is the 6th trumpet war, letting us know one more time that we are in fact living in the end time. We're not looking for the end time to begin years off. We're there. Proof number 4, of course, mark of the beast. Let's think about it. For instance, it's becoming a fad to inject an RFID, or a radio frequency identification chip, in a person's hand, which will allow you to operate a Bluetooth or a cellular phone, unlock a car door, or interact with any number of electronic gadgets. One man implanted a chip in his hand, successfully eliminating his boarding pass at the Stockholm-Arlanda airport in Sweden. And at the epicenter, the high-tech office building in Sweden, they're actually placing RFID chips in the hand of their tenants to gain access to the building. Now, you're hearing me right, folks. In 2016, human beings are willingly injecting electronic chips in their hands. According to the Dallas Observer, Amal Grafstra, the founder of Dangerous Things, has provided a global community of body hackers the ability to buy and inject implanted electronics. Grafstra, who has an implant in each of his hands, says business is booming. He said they've sold thousands and that the pace is increasing. Now, if you're not shocked by this, you really should be. Of course, for those of us who understand the prophecies of the Bible, a scenario like this appears obviously as a dangerous precursor to the mark of the beast. It's a time in the near future when the Antichrist will cause all to receive a mark of identification in their right hand or in their forehead. You can read it for yourself. It's found in Revelation 13:16. Having the understanding of the prophecy might have prevented these individuals from ever placing any kind of a chip or any device in their hand or anywhere else on their body. With that said, it could be very possible in the near future for these individuals to take the mark of the beast because they've been desensitized to this type of technology. Oh yeah, you want to put another chip on my hand? Go ahead. There's no way I would do that. You should never put a mark of identification on your person, and you should never pledge allegiance to a global governing entity or a world governing body or its leader. Two things you should never do to make sure you don't take the mark of the beast. No mark of identification on your person anywhere. So listen, I research world, national, and local news all day long, every day, and this is only one of the many things that astonishes me. And it's all as a result of the simple lack of prophetic knowledge. Revelation 13 prophesies immediately preceding the second coming of Jesus Christ, Satan will establish his kingdom here on earth. It'll be comprised of a one world government, a one world religion, and a global numbering system for every person on earth. It's the mark of the beast, folks. You've heard about it for years. 666. It's very recognizable. You say 666 to just about anybody, and they'll say, mark of the beast. Everybody knows about it. But yet there are people all over the world that are already putting chips in their hands, marks of identification in their hand. You couldn't pay me enough to do that. So think about it. Are we in the end time? That technology hasn't even been available until the last few years, the last, couple decades maybe. It's not even been available. But now, today, that technology is available where you can go up and unlock your car door, operate a Bluetooth. They're getting people used to injecting these things in their hands. That's something you should never even mess with. I would never do that. It's another proof, though, that we are, in fact, in the end time. Proof number 5, the world religion. In June of 2014, a couple years ago, year and a half ago, evangelicals, and they were talking about signing a joint declaration of faith in unity for mission. In June of 2014, as a result of a Kenneth Copeland Ministers Conference, Tony Palmer took a group of evangelical leaders to have lunch with Pope Francis at the Vatican. While they were there, they told Pope Francis that they wanted to accept his invitation to seek visible unity with the Bishop of Rome. At this luncheon, Pope Francis was presented with a proposed declaration of faith in unity for mission, and it was drawn up by the evangelicals. The proposal was to sign the document with both the Vatican and leaders of major Protestant churches in Rome next year in 2017 on the 500th anniversary of the beginning of the Reformation and the 50th anniversary of the Catholic Charismatic Renewal. The declaration itself has 3 elements in it. Number 1, the Nicene-Constantinople Creed, the core of the Catholic Lutheran Declaration of 99, making it clear that there is no disagreement over justification by faith. Number 2, it had the assertion that Catholics and evangelicals now teach the same gospel. And number 3, it had in it a freedom of conscience clause stressing the need for Catholics and evangelicals to respect each other's mission fields and treat the other with respect, not as rivals. So what I've done over the course of my program, now listen, I could give you hundreds of articles. I go through articles every day. Like I said before, I'm in world, national, and local news all day long, every day. Irvin Baxter, myself, our research team here, and we're posting these articles daily to our website. If you want to keep up on these articles, on these, I think all of these articles are on there and hundreds of others. Go to www.endtime.com and you can see they've got them listed. World government, Mark of the Beast, World War III, peace agreement, the Middle East, the Temple Mount, what's going on with the Third Temple. You can look under all those categories and see the articles there. And world religion's one of them. And you can read the articles, and it's easy for you to prove to yourself. Now, I went through a few articles today that I have got just over the last few days, and the world government one, I got that from something I've had for several months now. But I wanted to give you a very clear picture, because the Bible says that a world religion is going to be formed as well just prior to the second coming of Jesus Christ. Well, I just gave you a clear proof that we're headed into this world religion where evangelicals, there's all the Lutherans, all kinds of different people are going back to under the umbrella of one mother church. And they're also drawing all the religions of the world together. It's called interfaithism, and drawing all of the Protestant churches back home is called ecumenism. They're trying to gather a one world religious system. So they're trying to do away with conflict is the perceived or is what's trying to be sold to everybody. But the real thing behind it is that they're trying to, the global government is the main goal. And they know that they have to gather all the religions of the world together to get them under one belief system and to promote this and prop up this one world governing body. It's Revelation 13. Read that chapter and it explains it in great detail. A world religion is going to be established to prop up the world governing body. And we've seen that happen over the course of time. Many of the religious leaders are saying, hey, we need to let the United Nations take care of this. There needs to be a global political authority or a global authority over the economics of the world. And so they're already calling for all of this. And next year, many churches are wanting to sign justification of documents of justification by faith with the church in Rome and at the 500-year anniversary of the Reformation. So on today's program, I went over the world government. I went over the peace agreement. I went over World War III, the world religion, and Mark of the Beast. Just a few articles of the hundreds and hundreds that are out there proving to us that we are in fact in the end time. And we do it here all day, every day. That's the reason that we're here, is to show you and to help prepare you for what's coming in the near future. We want to help prepare you mentally and physically by showing you what's coming, because to walk through the times in the near future without a knowledge of Bible prophecy would be a huge travesty. It'd be like you'd be walking around with blindfolds on. So we want to reveal what's really going on with the world government, the world religion, the mark of the beast. You don't want to take a part of any of that. And also to prepare you spiritually, eventually, for eternity. That's the goal of our ministry. That's what we do here every day. Why? Because we are living in the end time, and it's very easy to prove.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.